I just think I'm better at what I do. Like, I don't know. I like being behind a tool better. At this point, it looks like she's going to run away. That kind of thing. Oh, all of that in there, walk to that. See that nice curve over there? That bend looks good. That bend looks good. Bad Chad saw everything he worked for start to fall apart. His job went from doing very well to having no income at all. I think I said in the first show that my character's cars would change the world. Bad Chad Customs was doing very well. The work never stopped until one time when everything changed. In the background, a terrible loss set off a chain of events that no one saw coming. Where did Bad Chad Customs go? How did Jolene get there? How did Chad's life fall apart after the cameras stopped rolling? Watch as we show you how much Chad's life has changed. That's the bottom, none of that Walt. Fully solid, while the top 2 rows were solid and never touched anything. They also never touched anything at the bottom. That makes me look bad because they are meant to be spread out. I understand that he wants to help. However, this set is wrong, and we don't have time to go backwards. A dream about a dump on national TV. It was clear from the start that Bad Chad Customs didn't fit in the world of well-polished automotive reality shows when it first came out in 2019. It didn't follow any of the rules that viewers were used to seeing. There wasn't a huge building shining under studio lights or a line of rich people waiting to pay. Instead, cameras put people into a small. The man in the middle of it all looked like he had spent decades breathing in welding fumes and living on coffee instead of trying to become famous. The garage in rural Nova Scotia was small and resources were scarce. Chad Hiltz didn't want to make perfect things that would look good behind silk ropes. He was pulling old, useless metal back from the edge of not being there and shaping it into something new, useful, and somehow beautiful. He put together his builds from things that shouldn't have been put together, like rusted Chrysler shells, roofs that didn't go together, and scrap metal that he found in lost places. All came together to form traditions that looked. They were careless until the very end, which proved they weren't. It felt like every project was a risk, and failure was always closer than victory. There was also stress because they knew that one mistake in cutting or math could ruin weeks of work. His fiancée and business manager, Jolene, his son, Colton, and a group of local friends who came because they believed in Chad's vision, even when it didn't make sense, made up a small but strong team that kept the chaos from falling apart completely. The show's appeal was simple, but it was also risky because it didn't have any of the normal safety nets that reality TV shows have. There were no huge budgets to fix mistakes, no big backers to take the losses, and only Chad's ability to make things up on the spot left room for error. At first, viewers didn't realize how tough the production schedule really was. Discovery required planned builds with clear story arcs, rising drama, and perfectly staged surprises, even though the work itself was unpredictable and tough. Every wait cost money. Every mistake was shown to people across the country. Everyone involved slowly started to get worn out by the constant speed at which trash became TV gold. But that pressure wasn't the real thing. There is danger just below the surface. It wasn't broken parts or impossible deadlines that caused the bigger problem. It was Chad's personality, which he had built up before the cameras came. Chad's first steps into building custom cars were done alone in his shed. A long time before his work was shown on TV and before anyone thought his style could carry a series. He hadn't had any official training and didn't have a plan to follow. He learned everything by doing it over and over again and failing each time. He also pushed himself to see how far his imagination could go when he didn't have much money or other tools. Before he became famous, Chad worked as a fleet manager and lead mechanic for big equipment companies. He was in charge of keeping huge fleets of machines that sometimes had more than 700 of them. It was a high-pressure job where mistakes had immediate effects. That experience made him more instinctive and pushed him to quickly and creatively figure out how to fix complicated mechanical problems. These are the skills that he later used to build his custom cars. Because he lived in a rural area of Nova Scotia, he never had sure access to specialty parts and high-end materials. This made him stick to a working man's budget that relied on salvage, scrap, and anything else that could be used again. getting rid of old tools, broken machines, and once lost, metal was used as raw material. And as time went on, necessity turned into a unique style based on purpose, personality, and risk instead of perfection. That character was solidified at Green Goblin Customs in Canning, Nova Scotia. The shop was named after one of his earliest and most daring creations, a 1962 Chrysler Newport that had been wildly modified, fitted with a 1974 Cadillac engine and an Oldsmobile roof. This was the moment when Chad stopped being invisible. The car was mean, strange, and hard to ignore. As his drive grew, he kept taking parts from boats, planes, trunks, and anything else that other people had left behind, putting them together to make machines that wouldn't fit in. When people finally found Chad, he was already on the edge of something dangerous, with no clear way back. People tend to pay more attention to things that are moving quickly, and problems that a maker can't fix are often caused by attention. People became more interested in Chad's character as his work became more well-known and the spotlight shone brighter on him. What happens when a name that was earned through hard work and passion turns into a problem instead of a badge of honor? The dream was dying. Reality stepped in and stopped the progress just as TV exposure started to make it stronger. No amount of skill at lying could fix it. When licensing problems arose with the Green Goblin name, what happened next had nothing to do with engines or metal. It had everything to do with lawyers, paperwork, and rules that were foreign to a builder who had spent his whole life using his hands to solve problems. Chad had to get the message because he could no longer use the Green Goblin name for business reasons. And to protect the business he had worked on for years, he had to give up the personality that helped make it what it was. The change wasn't a choice, and it wasn't just for show because it meant taking down a public image piece by piece. While the cameras were still rolling and the deadlines were getting closer, signs had to be taken down, merchandise had to be redesigned, and all digital traces of the old name had to be rewritten. This included social media pages, the website, and even sponsorship pitches that had to be given with a new story. The shop opened with a new name, Hiltz Auto Company. This was the smart thing to do and the legal thing to do. But being realistic didn't make it easy. The quick need to rebuild branding, inventory, and marketing made things even harder for a small business that was already under a lot of stress from TV schedules and production pressure. Added another heavy layer to a machine that was already full. The world changed in ways that no one could have predicted during that time. There was an outbreak. Supply chains broke down, making it hard to predict when and how to get parts. While the rules for filming got stricter and the safety standards were always changing. Chad was known for his quick improvisational builds, but they were much harder to do when supplies were delayed, movement was limited, and every step had to be done while navigating new levels of regulation. What used to be a peaceful chaos changed into something much weaker, where even small problems could stop a whole project and make costs go up. Even when everything is perfect, TV costs a lot, and this time wasn't perfect at all. Even though work kept going on, the signs were clear for anyone who looked. As a result, the scores were good but not amazing. Discovery started to put more effort into bigger, safer franchises that had lower risk and offered more stable returns. Bad Chad Customs started looking like a good long-term investment over time, and the momentum dropped without any fanfare or warning. No final ads were shown for Season 2 when it ended in October 2020. Push. A goodbye show and any kind of explanation given to the viewers. The episodes stopped showing all of a sudden, and no one from the network came forward to explain why. People who were fans were left guessing and confused. For Chad, though, the end of the show wasn't the only trouble. What came next was much louder and harder to get away from. But what happens when the name that helped build the dream turns into something that could destroy it? Fame turns into fire. Chad's image spread faster thanks to TV than he could handle, which turned him into Bad Chad, the person who could make whole cars out of trash while the clock next to him wound down. The internet didn't see him as a builder or even a character, they saw him as something to be studied, challenged, and taken apart piece by piece. This is what TV didn't prepare him for. Strangers paused frames, zoomed in on welds, and played back scenes on car forums, Facebook groups, and YouTube comment sections until every choice became an argument and every shortcut became an accusation. Some builders thought his methods were careless and said that the fact that he used scrap metal and unusual methods showed that he lacked control in his work. Or strength. Some people said the show made the stress too high or skipped steps that would never be missed in a real store. While a smaller but louder group said the whole thing was set up for TV, making it seem like nothing people saw could be trusted. While it was one thing to deal with doubts from people who knew you and understood the limits of your work, it was a whole other thing to be judged by thousands of strangers whose only experience was edited video meant to entertain rather than explain. Chad didn't want to get involved at first because he had always done things his own way and never counted on outside approval to back him up. Do the work. Ignoring noise has always been a way to stay alive. And for a while, that feeling stayed strong as the show became more well-known. But the criticism wasn't just about welds and timelines, it also spread to his personality, the way he ran his business, and even the people who worked with him in the shop. It stopped being about cars and turned into a personal talk. And the weight of it changed once that line was passed. In the end, the debate turned to how Chad ran his business, with some saying he was too demanding, too rough or harsh with his crew. Instead of letting the rumors spread, he dealt with it directly in a video that didn't include an apology or performance. He was honest about what he expected from the people who worked with him. His standards were clear and could not be changed. Get there on time. Do your best to understand, work hard, and listen. If those standards seemed too high, then his shop wasn't the right place to be. Some watchers thought that honesty sounded harsh, which added to the picture they already had of the person. For Chad, it was just the way things were. Because there is no time to hesitate or not fully commit when there are strict schedules and limited resources. For the builds he was trying to make, he had to be completely focused, and anyone who got in the way of that became an enemy instead of a partner. But even someone who can handle a lot of stress has limits, and the constant attention started to add to what he was already going through. There were always threats online. The pressure from TV never really went away, and working long hours for both of them made things even more worn out. He felt like every job was a test, and he had to keep proving that his work, his process, and his identity were real. It was like an invisible weight that he couldn't lift. People around him wanted him to work harder and move faster, but the stress was already getting to him. And just when it seemed like people could always bounce back from tough situations, real life dealt them a blow that no amount of toughness could handle. What happens when the fight isn't in front of everyone, but is instead very, very private? Feelings of grief behind closed doors. In late 2024, Jolene's mother, Jacqueline "Jackie" McIntyre, died at the age of 61 after a fight with cancer that was described in her obituary as one of grace, strength, and dignity. What happened next was something she could not have planned for. After that, Jolene wrote about how peaceful. How her mother died, how she was surrounded by family, and how shocking it was that things went from normal to lost forever so quickly. The sadness came out of nowhere. It wouldn't stay inside because this wasn't just a private tragedy happening in the background. Jackie may not have been on camera, but she was there behind the scenes keeping everything together. Every night, she watched Bad Chad Customs from home and cheered the shop on as if she were there with them. It was always easy to count on her support, and when she wasn't there, momentum or production couldn't fill the void. Jolene was more than just Chad's fiancée or a. She was a supporting character in the background because she had been the operations planner, tactician, and stabilizing force for almost 10 years, turning a hand-built shop into a 7-figure business through discipline, planning, and hard work. People with that much responsibility are affected by grief in a way that goes far beyond their own lives, because the whole operation rests on their presence, energy, and clarity. Chad and Jolene didn't push through and act like nothing had changed. Instead, they did something that goes against everything the internet expects from artists and public figures. They slowed down, and the speed dropped. Less and less episodes of the show were uploaded. The shop got quieter, and the steady stream of public appearances stopped. There were long periods of silence that felt strange to people who were used to seeing a lot of action. When a post said that the YouTube channel was going on hiatus with no return date given, it became hard to ignore the change. A simple sentence that meant a lot more than it seemed at first glance. The stop wasn't a sign that Chad and Jolene were giving up or that the business had failed, it was an attempt to breathe during a time when moving forward seemed impossible. Grief does not follow schedules, and being tough will not make it fit into a handy time. On the other hand, the internet rarely lets quiet be empty. Since there were no clear answers for weeks, people talked among themselves, speculating that the business must be having trouble or that the stress had finally worn them down. Others said the pair had broken up, that Jolene had left, or that bad Chad Customs was over for good. This turned absence into story and uncertainty into conclusion. Every idea spread faster than the truth, taking advantage of the fact that there were no new information or a presence that was once there but was suddenly gone. Then, something changed after weeks of questions not being answered and assumptions growing. Through all the noise, a notice showed up where there had been silence before. It let you know that the story wasn't over yet. What was the point of the message, even if it wasn't clear what would happen next? And what did Bad Chad do after that? A smaller group is more likely to get along. It had been 2 weeks of silence, which felt longer than it should have, but it ended without a fuss when a new YouTube video showed Chad working on a land speed record motorcycle build with Colton working next to him as if nothing had ever stopped. They shared the same simple message on all of their social media accounts. It didn't offer any explanations or emotional frames, it just said that they were back, that the work never stopped, and that they respected the people who stuck with them during the quiet time. There was no need to talk about the rumors that had filled the void, the proof was already in the shop, with sparks flying, metal being bent, and momentum being recovered. People who had been watching the station for a long time saw that the return showed another change that had been happening slowly over time. Doug and Nate, two regular faces, had been showing up less often for a while before anyone said anything about it. Showing up in fewer builds and standing farther away from the middle until they were gone for good. There wasn't a goodbye show or a final group shot, and no one talked about what happened or why the shift happened. Their disappearance wasn't made public. It was taken in. When there was quiet online, it did exactly what silence always does. It led to more speculation because fan groups and comment sections were full of people asking the same unanswered question over and over again. Others thought it was burnout, long hours, or disagreements about how the shop was being run. Some watchers thought it was money that caused the break. Each idea that is based on personal opinion instead of facts. The only thing that can be said for sure is that there has never been a clear public answer. Everything else is just a bunch of rumors dressed up as facts. It was clear that their leaving had an effect on the shop itself. Because losing Doug and Nate wasn't just a matter of having fewer people working, it also meant shifting the stress in a system that was already working under a lot of stress. The work didn't stop, but it changed, which meant that Chad had to do more physical and mental work or rely more on the people who were still there when the cameras stopped shooting. That change made Colton stand out more.